how's it going, everyone? I just wanted to spend a minute unpacking this graphic for you. And I want to start by telling a story. One time I was in a church um, that my family and I were going to, and and I love this church. We love the people at this church. And it was at a time in my life where I felt like, man, I wish I could be more influential. I wish I could teach more. Um, but I had some immaturities in me, and I think a chart like this would have been helpful. What happened was, um, I thought that just by showing my seriousness for scripture and kind of making myself available would be enough to to be able to share the pulpit. But that wasn't the case, and I think it just came off as kind of like immature. Um, but one of my friends, he he wasn't trying to gain a certain status in the church. He was going to the same church. Instead, he just said, "You know what? I'm going to serve in the youth group, and I'm just going to do the best job I can, with no strings attached, um, no nothing." And he did that, man. He did that faithfully for like 2 years or something. And and the fruit of that was when he eventually got some pulpit time and got to share his heart from the pulpit and teach and preach. And I thought, man, what am I doing wrong? Something feels off. And I think it was this. I think I was trying to act like in that top part there. Like I would try to I tried to come in and say like, hey, I know how to teach or preach, and so I should just be able to. But I had no status. I had no. Um, I wasn't kind of on that top status with say the pastors, where they should have trusted me at all. um, and so I could try all the persuading in the world with them. They're like, hey, you should let me teach or preach. Um, but they had every right to not let me do that. And so what my friend did was he actually showed some provenness. He came in not assuming the status of a pastor or a preacher or anything. He just said, "Hey," he kind of showed, unlike me, he kind of showed an example in what Paul told Timothy in speech and conduct, in love, faith, and purity. He won the hearts of the leadership by doing that. Um, and then the other way that influence could be exerted is if, say, a pastor was just pulling the pastor card down and said, "Hey, I've got some prestige. Let me influence this situation." And so, man, if you resonate with that story, um, consider this, especially as artists, when we are in situations with any group, but especially in church context. Um, Man, whether you're an artist or a plumber or a doctor, the church is not a space to, one up everybody. We are all there, and the efforts to make disciples and use your gifts, um, they get termed up when we come in with a servant posture, no matter what status we actually have. And so, if you want to learn more about this, some of these concepts, David Hasselgrave has a book called "Planting Church," or no, not that one. Um, I totally forgot the name of it. Communicating Christ cross culturally. That's it. Um, and so, some of these ideas that are here with status and influencing, I got from that book, but yeah, hopefully that is helpful for you today. Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Matt. I wanted to take a minute and unpack this chart for you. I know I posted about it recently, but I think it's really powerful, like really a useful thing if you can kind of get the concept. So let me start by telling a story. One time I was serving in a church, and I was kind of a no-name outsider, um, and trying to exert some kind of influence. Um, I thought, man, I could preach or teach from the pulpit. There's a certain spot in the church that I feel like I'm gifted for. Um, at that time in my life, there were some immature qualities, and this was one of them. Um, See, no one in the leadership uh, knew I was coming in with that on my mind, and nor did they have any reason to believe that because I wasn't coming in as a pastor. And so, what we're talking about here are different statuses, and that's what these boxes represent here. Every group of people has certain kind of statuses. Um, families have mother and father at the top. Underneath would be the children. In our culture, maybe they're starting to flip that kids actually have um, higher status than adults. Every social group, every club, playing sports growing up, you have sports teams where you have coaches and you have teammates, and the fans are somewhere in here too. But churches have these also. And so if you are an artist, whatever group you are occupying, it would be good to be aware of these social things going on. And so there are three kind of general ways to have a voice and have influence. And it's first by knowing your where do I stand here? Am I a new person to this group? How am I being introduced? Do they see me as an artist, or am I not an artist? Where in the art spectrum am I? Where's my skill level at? Like, all that is kind of in the mix. But if you are an artist in a non-artistic group, it's good to know that, and it's good to know where people perceive that within the specific group. If you are in a culture that highly values artists, I know of one. I knew one missionary who was working in Africa, I think Somalia, and he said warriors and poets are the most respected people in this whole culture. It's like, man, you have a different status if you are a poet in that society. Other societies don't have that. And so if you occupy any one of these statuses, just know that your influence at that moment is usually with people within that status. You can have a persuasion among them. It's usually a little easier to persuade from within your status. You could also exert some prestige if you were trying to shape or influence those in a lower status. Now, this isn't like a value statement, like these people are lower than me. It's just the way we categorize different different statuses and roles within our communities. So as a parent, I know that, hey, I am a dad, and so I have prestige just by that social category. And so when I'm trying to teach my kids or correct them or anything like that, it's because I have that status of dad. But if you are trying to influence or have a voice in a higher status, like if you are in the lower, trying to influence higher, one, it's really hard. If my kids want to influence me, like intentionally say, like, let's change dad's mind, that's just hard. It's not impossible. It's just hard. And but the way that wins over the heart of someone usually comes off through provenness, through character, and through building trust. And so, just like Paul told Timothy, Timothy, you're younger. Let no one despise you for that, but set an example in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity. And so, to kind of wrap this up, I was perplexed at that church I was serving at. I was perplexed because someone else a friend of mine who was also serving there, he, having no agenda of his own, just said, hey, let's serve here. Let's just jump in. I like helping out the youth, so I'm just going to serve the youth. There was a need for it. So for a season, he and his family, they just poured themselves out for the youth. And what came of that is they eventually like let him have the pulpit for different times to share and teach and preach. And so why was that different than my example? It's because he proved himself. His character showed that, man, he came in as a servant. And so if you're an artist resonating with any of this, the core of any of all this is to come and be a servant, empty yourself, whatever group you are trying to have a voice in.